Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Mary Faulkner, and I'm a senior advisor for IAHR. We are a business transformation consultancy focused on helping organizations move from where they are today to where they want to be in the future. With me today are the three managing principals of IA, Mark Stelzner, Kimberly Carroll, and Jason Carroll, and I'll have them introduce themselves in just a moment. As we have all been observing what's happening in the world with the COVID-19 situation, we, like many businesses, immediately thought, what can we do to help? We've been sharing resources for free on our website, and we've opened up office hours for anyone who needs to talk to schedule time with us and one of our advisors. But inevitably, we also think about how this unprecedented time may be impacting businesses now and in the future. So we thought it would be helpful to share some of the insight from our leadership team around what they're seeing and what they think the future might hold once we begin to emerge from this situation. Quick point, this is a very informal discussion. We are all working from our home offices. There's not going to be any fancy graphics or walk-up music, so don't expect anything too much, but we really want to have some really great conversation around this. So now that I've set us up for some great success there, let's go ahead and throw it to you guys to go ahead and introduce yourselves. So Kimberly, why don't you get started?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary. So as Mary said, my name is Kimberly Carroll, Managing Principal with IA. I've been with IA for about 7 years. I can't believe it. That's been amazing. The most amazing years of my life. So, but in the industry, I've been around the block for about 20 years doing HR, payroll, finance, accounting, product development. I have a pretty unique background in what I've done. One of the things that I love about what we do and what I do here at IA, and I'm not going to really talk about just myself, I'm going to talk about what we do, is one of our secret sauces is getting to know our clients. What I love is that one of the things that we have done is open, as Mary said, office hours, but what we do here is we get to know our clients for life, and our clients feel very comfortable with coming to us at any time. And we mentor, we talk through things. It's not just about the work we do in our engagements with them, it's about what we do personally, professionally with them as well.
Thanks, Kimberly. Jason, you want to take over for your introduction?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mary. So name's Jason Carroll. I'm also a managing principal with IA. I've been with the firm now, I think it's coming up on 3 years this summer. Really where I focus and spend the majority of my time is in software development and product development. So we here at IA have great things in the works. We hope to release this to you guys in the near term. So thanks.
Thanks, Jason. And last but not least, Mark.
Hey everybody, Mark Stelzner. I'm the founder and a managing principal of IA. I founded the firm a little over 14 years ago, about 25 years of HR transformation experience. I have the great honor and pleasure of leading our merry band of misfits through all the wonderful projects that we're able to support on behalf of these incredibly complex, really dynamic and fascinating organizations. And Mary, would it help if I just spend a minute to talk about what we do?
Yeah, that would be fantastic for people who aren't familiar with us.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. And thanks to everybody for spending time with us today. So we do 3 major things for very complex, typically multinational organizations. Our clients range from currently 3,000 to 500,000 employees. They're in every vertical, every geography that you can imagine. But for leaders of these organizations, C-suite leaders, we offer strategic services to help HR think about their operating model, think about building the business case to substantiate any form of transformation that they may want to achieve, and also thinking about process improvement. A lot of what we do is we look at prioritization, we determine what you do first, and then we say, how do you actually improve those processes that you've elected to prioritize? So Mary and Kimberly jointly lead our strategic services practice, which is, again, focused on that C-level organization. What's your destination? What's your prioritization? And how do you get the operating capital and opportunity costs to substantiate those needs? We do a lot of provider selections in our provider engagement practice. We focus on selecting those best fit providers, on contract negotiations, and also on relationship management and governance. Something that requires a key focus and interest of ours, whether that be a remediation of a broken relationship, or how do you eke the most out of your ongoing relationships with a myriad of service providers across talent acquisition, talent management, core HR, payroll, total rewards, the entire employee life cycle. Then we have a continuous improvement practice. I talked about process improvement. That is certainly part of our continuous improvement practice. project execution. How do we help you continue to execute on your initiatives? Perhaps you've selected a provider, now you're moving into implementation of that engagement. And also focus on anything and everything that you might want to do around change management. Change management is just not a moment in time. It's part of everything that we do. It's one of the reasons why we exist. But we really do believe in continuous improvement. We do all this as a fiercely independent firm. We derive no revenue directly or indirectly from the HR service provider community. So we give really clear and concise advice and guidance. And we're really here as an advocate. It's kind of antithetical to what you would think of a consultancy, but our goal is actually to put ourselves out of work, is to train and transfer knowledge, put our clients in a position to self-govern. And part of that is really giving everything that we can give, as Kimberly touched on a little bit earlier, bringing the great technology and innovation that Jason can bring forward, bringing the best practices and knowledge, bringing interpersonal connection and relationships, and doing all that in a guise that regardless of whether we're retained or not, we're always here for you. We have conversations literally every day with organizations that are not working with us to give them good advice and guidance. And that's why we're pleased to be here today as well. So thanks, Mary.
Great, thanks so much, Mark. So those of you out there who might be watching this and have never seen a panel discussion before, basically what we do is we have 4 general questions that I'm going to be asking our panel of 3. And they're going to weigh in on it. It's just going to be a conversation. So Mark, I'm going to throw the first question to you, and Kimberly and Jason, feel free to jump in. So our first question is, what changes have you seen and heard about within the business community ever since the stay-at-home recommendations have gone into effect with the virus?
Yeah, and I'll probably give maybe a bit of a surprising response. I think it's leading with empathy. Given the physical, the financial, the emotional impacts, the COVID-19, that the headwinds in the financial market are having for virtually every enterprise around the world, what I've really seen is a focus again on the human, a focus on human connection, a focus on trying to understand the key care-abouts of the individual. Certainly organizations are trying to link that to their business outcomes. But more and more, we're finding that every conversation like this, every virtual get-together now, which is all get-togethers now, hopefully, if you're paying attention, we are finding that people are starting with, how are you? And okay is not really a viable answer anymore. We really want to understand how people are feeling, what they need. Are they getting the provisions they need? Are they getting the support? Are they feeling okay? This is a very difficult time. No one is immune from some challenge associated with this. So I find that one of the most wonderful things that we're seeing is an empathetic and sympathetic understanding of those that are around us.
I agree with that. That's great, Mark. Kimberly or Jason, you want to jump in?
Yeah, what I'm seeing is definitely that a lot of care around the world with their employees and how they're managing. But what I'm also seeing is on the flip side, that companies were not prepared. A lot of companies do have a lot of disaster recovery plans, especially if you're in the services industry, when you're servicing. So like in our world, a disaster recovery plan is if a data center goes down, right? That's what it's normally focused on, not whether or not you have this virus that has now attacked our way of being. So that was really fascinating to me to see that companies were not really prepared for what has happened to them. But the good thing I'm seeing is that they're really working with their teams. They're really working on how to manage it. I mean, even in our personal life, we're watching our kids have to go through the same thing, right? It's not just about working. It's about watching our kids now have to take virtual classes and do all of that and the technology that is needed to be able to support it. So that was one thing. That was one thing that I've noticed.
Definitely. Jason?
Yeah, and some tactical things that I have noticed, because I still will venture out to the grocery store to get the essentials because you just need these things, right? So, but what you're starting to notice is obviously a collapsing of the supply chain. Not all the goods are getting to where they need to go, so they need to probably think about what's the better tactic to make sure supplies are in the right locations for the right times when they're needed by the most people. The second thing I noticed is the distancing. Everybody seems to be following the social distance for the most part. But in stores, they're starting to put up barriers, like physical barriers between the cashier and the customer, which is something new, right? So we never usually had a physical, unless you're at the bank or something like that, you never really have a physical barrier to try to prevent any kind of disease transmission. The other thing too is that I see a lot more cleaning when I'm going to these places. Everything's being sanitized, which is great. I'm starting to see something that's interesting in like the auto dealers, as an example, is you can now fully do your transaction online from trade-in to new vehicle purchase, and they'll even drop the car off and pick up your trade-in. I was like, well, okay, that's great. So what do I need to fill out this whole stack of paper when I go buy a car now? I can just do it all online. So, I mean, you see, things have changed. Obviously, you want to be, one thing that you feel stuck, which is good because we want to slow the transmission down. But I see a lot more people outside taking advantage of the opportunities to walk their dogs, the exercise, all while maintaining social distance for the most part. But I do stop and talk to them, keeping my distance, just to see how they're doing. Like, to get to Mark's point, he's kind of leading with empathy now. And, hey, how you doing? I actually have learned who my neighbors are, which is a big thing for living in Florida.
Exactly. I'm seeing people walk by my house now. And I'm like, I didn't know they lived here. Okay, that's great. I think there's a lot of differences that we're seeing. You know, when I talk to HR practitioners who are in the workforce today, they're probably feeling the brunt of it as well. Just so many things to keep up with. Changing leave administration alone has probably caused a number of sleepless nights right now. So my heart goes out to them right now. So let's transition back to sort of the things around the changes. You know, Jason, you talked about the fact that you can buy a car online now. So, you know, how will we get by without the Sharpie being written on a piece of paper and slid slowly across the desk to you? But how do you think businesses will be forced to change once these restrictions have been lifted and business goes back to somewhat normal?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, it's a great question, and it's a very nebulous question, if you will, right? So it's depending on the industry that the businesses are operating in. But I mean, we can touch on a couple examples. One, for some reason, I have this weird fascination with airlines and flight travel, and I'm just fascinated by the logistics in that. But if you look at the number of flights just over the last 3 weeks, let's say, they're down to operating at 1/3 of their capacity. So, which is really interesting, is how few people are on the planes and how few flights there are. So I would imagine that as stuff starts to open up, I don't think that the capacity will come back anytime soon or quickly, because I think they're going to want to exercise or fill up those planes as much as possible first. So I think you'll start to see a slow ramp up back in the airline industry. And the question too is, who wants to travel now? Nobody really. And then when you do start to be able to travel again, how are they going to like enforce social distancing on the plane? Are you going to be confined into those 18 inches of space, or are they going to have to seat people, you know, 1 seat away from each other? You have to see how that kind of comes about. So that would be interesting to think about. Manufacturing is huge, right? So think about manufacturing, and where we're kind of caught unawares is the personal protection equipment, any kind of pharmaceuticals that are kind of manufactured out of the country. I would imagine that within the United States, we'll see an uptick in the manufacturing of those particular products going forward. We mentioned the service industry. The one that I think about too is conferences. Will we have a conference in 2020? Will that ever happen? Will there be any kind of event this year where there's a mass concentration of humans? I would say probably not. I would say most people don't want to get that close to one another. So we'll see what's that going to look like for the conference industry. The same with the restaurants. You know, I think there's going to be a delay before people are comfortable sitting back in a crowded restaurant or a bar, for example. I also think about the knowledge industry. So this is where we kind of spend a bulk of our time, is because a lot of our work we do is knowledge-based. Will companies now say, okay, well, we've switched the gears, we've gone to remote working. Do we still need to maintain these real estate complexes? Do we need to have buildings with 20,000 people in them? Or now, can I save on real estate costs and go completely virtual with my workforce? So I think you'll start to see some industries go that route. Obviously, stuff that, you know, is manufacturing where it's hands-on and stuff like that, I think we'll continue to see an uptick in that space. But I think the other industries are going to be somewhat rattled by this. And I think it's going to be not just a quick bounce back to recovery. I think it's going to take probably a number of years before we start to fully recover as a country and as a world.
Yeah, it could be something, could be a long time. Mark or Kimberly, you want to jump in?
I mean, I was talking to a large global employer. They're a manufacturer and a retailer just a few hours ago. And one of the things we were joking about is this notion of non-essential, right? So we've now come to know and love this term non-essential. So if it's non-essential, why were we doing it? If the whole metric is non-essential, then was it just fun to go on a business trip just because it was fun? So I agree so much, Jason, with what you've said, because we're now resetting to a different level of expectation. And we'll shown an ability to not necessarily thrive, but survive with less than in some areas, or another alternative to what normal was. So what'll be fascinating to watch is sort of the ordinal and the magnitude of what comes back first, and to what extent. So I was thinking about your comment about sitting on planes. So when we go to book seats on a plane, will they block out, every second seat so that they're only going to start up by filling every 3 seats unless you're grouping in families? Like what will happen, and how does that affect the weight distribution? I think about the same kind of things. I was talking to my wife this weekend about when we go back to a restaurant, as a table of 2, right? We all maybe go out on our date nights, right? As a party of 2, usually they will stick you right between 2 other tables of 2. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be probably a little uncomfortable just sitting, maybe this far away and eating next to other people. And the speed, I guess, at which this has emotionally changed our optics and the lens in which we view work and what will be a normative work environment, the way we think about personal connection. For us, we're a virtual company, so I felt like we're very fortunate that we were pretty well prepared for this. It's relatively business as usual. What stopped for us is business travel. So even the idea, Jason, you touched upon about that's what my neighbors look like, or Mary, I didn't realize that they even lived in my neighborhood, or wow, I didn't know Sally had a dog. I've never seen Sally walk their dog. So it is causing us to maybe refocus and reprioritize. I'm curious to see how work weights in our prioritization going forward. So not only it's some of the things we talked about in terms of the physicality of work, but does work become part of our life versus our life? Do we work to live? Do we live to work? Like, how will that continuum balance itself once we come on the other side of it? But Kimberly, you probably have other perspectives as well.
Yeah, and I think that what's fascinating about it is that, like, I love to travel, so it's been a really weird for me to not pack a bag. I felt like I was on the road every week, and now I'm not packing a bag. But it's been nice to reconnect with the family. So I think that the family unit really comes back together when you are able to stay and be able to be virtual. And we've been able to do it with our clients. I've had several of my where I was supposed to travel to a client site, and we were doing these full day workshops. Well, we've done them virtually. Yeah, it's tough to do it, but we were able to really focus, get the job done, and still do it. So I think that businesses, when you think about when we get back to work, businesses are going to really, really have to think about the work from home and whether or not that works. It's not going to work for everybody, and not everybody likes to work from home. I mean, I've talked to several people that are like, I don't want to do this forever. I want to get back to my office. I miss my office, so that's, it'll be interesting to see how businesses come back from this and what they do to support the employees that like to do it and the employees that don't like to do it.
Mm-hmm. It's been interesting to me to see the chatter around employees and candidates asking for reasonable accommodations, and how businesses were saying, oh, it's an unreasonable accommodation. We can't possibly let you work virtually or get you the equipment you need. And now all of a sudden businesses were able to flip on a dime, and most businesses were able to find a way to accommodate. There are some that are still struggling, but how many work from home options suddenly became to light. And so it's just been interesting to see that conversation happening around, once you strip away the almost fake obstacles that we've created for ourselves with policy and procedure, how quickly we can actually adapt to a new way of working. Which leads me to my next question, and Kimberly, I throw it to you. What changes do you hope that businesses will continue to keep and make after this immediate crisis has passed?
Yeah, I truly hope that they do adopt, because even though we've been working from home, or people have been working virtually for a long time, a lot of companies have not adopted it. And there's reasons why. I mean, they need to put policies in place. They need to build their infrastructure better to be able to support it. There's a lot to be done with that, but I do hope that they adopt almost a personal preference for employees and what they prefer to do. Do they prefer to work from home, or do they prefer to go into an office? To be able to support both of those would be awesome, I think. And but they need to teach, as I said, they need policies. They can't just set it up. So one of my first clients here at oops, I said their name. One of my first clients, what was interesting when I was talking to her was that she couldn't believe, they never thought that they could ever work from home, ever. And she's like, wow, we're doing it. You know, I mean, our corporate staff is doing it. So it's fascinating. But we were talking about, you know, policies and engagement and making sure that you have the right people doing it. But I hope that is where this takes us, is that piece of it. But they also need to, as I said, their disaster recovery, they need to make sure that their disaster recovery, I hope that they build better plans to be able to support something like this. So it's not so disjointed when the order came in to when they were able to be more productive on a virtual basis. The other thing is around the Family Leave Medical Act and like providing a better leave policy and stuff like that. So I hope those three things happen when we get back to work.
Yeah, definitely. Jason, what do you think? What do you hope that businesses take for going forward?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of build on a couple of Kimberly's points is really now, and I believe Mary, Mark, you guys have touched on this. It's really companies now should be focusing in on the employees, because we're in a war for skills, right? The skills don't exist across the board for what the businesses are hoping to accomplish. So really, hopefully this will kind of flip that back onto the folks that run some of these large corporations and really, think about the employee and think about the employee experience and really take care of your employees, because they're, at the end of the day, and not to be cliche, but they're your most valuable assets going up and down those elevators. So really focus on the employees, make it a good place to work, and make it a place that people want to come and work and they want to do their best. So hopefully we'll see that continue to go forward.
Thanks, Jason. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I hope the unseen workforce continues to be seen. If you think about it, what's been fascinating about the experience is the people that we take for granted often are not the people that are at the highest levels of the organization. These are the delivery truck drivers. These are the nurses and medical professionals. These are the truck drivers and those packing and unpacking, every container and every product we could possibly imagine. It's those working in the distribution centers and the .com, responses to overwhelming demand for certain paper products, let's say. These are the millions and millions of unseen workers that are perceived to be fungible, replaceable, that are keeping everything around us going every single day. One of the things that we haven't talked about, fortunately, as a country is a loss of power or the ability to have clean water, right? People certainly have stockpiled, but we take for granted that we've got high-speed internet service. We get irritated when our video streaming doesn't go as well because we've got 14 people on devices now where we didn't before. But these are all, cared for by this unseen workforce. So what are we going to do about that? What are we going to do about minimum wage? What are we going to do about benefits eligibility? What are we going to do to recognize the people that have kept us all afloat in this, unpredictable disaster? What are we going to do about alumni? One of the things that's been fascinating in the medical profession, and we have a series of hospital systems as clients, is calling back alumnus. A public cry from the governor of New York to say, if you are a retired medical professional, would you please come back, for a temporary assignment? So our notion of alumnus and the fact that we want you to stay connected to your profession, to continue to stay skilled, as Jason, as you were touching upon on this war for skills that we're talking about so much this year, everybody matters. Everybody's important. Everyone has something to offer. And I'd say prior to this, that wasn't given enough airtime. We didn't recognize or put a spotlight on those particular populations. They were largely taken for granted. So the question for us as a society, as employers, will also be, do we continue to spotlight the value, the incredible, unbelievable value that we not only found, but should continue to find in those workforces?
Yeah. All great things. It's forced businesses to think so much differently and to be creative in how they tackle problems. I hope that mindset carries forward after all of this is over, and it stops becoming about, well, we can't do that. It becomes, well, how do we make it happen? So lots of opportunity once everyone has a chance to kind of catch their breath and get going again after all of this. So this is kind of a toss-up for you. So whoever wants to talk first, go for it. So what advice do you have for leaders who are working through this right now?
So I'll go. So I think that when I think about what's going on, how we're working, the way that this is going to change the way we work, is one of the key concepts that we've talked about here at IA is around why wait? Why wait until this is over to start making the changes necessary to benefit from what's going to happen at the other end? So for me, it's start looking at the way you're doing things, looking at your policies, looking at your processes, looking at the way you work, looking at all of it, and start now making those incremental changes so that when we are able to start going back, you are now prepared, versus waiting until they say, oh, after April 30th, you can all go back to work, which we know that's not going to happen, but be prepared. That's all. I mean, so the why wait is really one of our key themes is start now. Don't wait until the end, and then you're now forced into a different challenge in your business, is all these people coming back to work, and now what do you do, and can you support it, and now do you have the right infrastructure? All of that should be start now. Don't wait. There's no reason to wait.
So I just add a couple points based on building on a theme. So one is empathy, right? So you have to be empathetic to the folks that are kind of you're leading or working for you. And then two is honesty. You have to be candid with the folks that are working for you. Be honest. Hey, if you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer, and you say, hey, let's work together to try to figure out what the answer might be going forward. So definitely candidness and honesty and empathy will go a long way through getting through a tough situation.
I agree with what you both said, and you know, another variation on that is just transparency, which I think you're both advocating for. You know, let's be clear about what we can and can't achieve. Let's be clear, as you said, Jason, about what we know and don't know. Let's get creative, as Kimberly suggested, on what we can take advantage of in this moment, right? If we do have capacity, how do we use that to retool and get ready to thrive again? We will thrive again. We just have to put everybody in a position of strength, and that comes from knowledge. You know, left to their own devices, you know, people will spin understandably and scenario plan and think through every possible permutation. Why not do that as a leader? Why not lay on the table, there are 3 possible paths or 4 possible scenarios or 5 possible outcomes, and be clear about what they might be. People need that information. They need leadership, frankly. Some will lead and some will want to be led, but it's time for you to show up and take the mantle and own the role you occupy. And with this role that the 3 of us occupy comes the burden of leadership. Comes, you know, every week, as you all know, we have a call every Friday. And every Friday we talk about exactly where we are for our entire team. And I think it's helpful. It's not always great news, right? Some weeks are better than others, but I think it's helpful for people to at least have situational awareness and have an understanding of what we are thinking about. Because the other thing is, you know, as employees, we've all worked for leaders and organizations. We're like, are they even aware of what's going on? Are they even paying attention? Are they even processing this? You know, you start to get, like, oh my gosh, is anyone even here? Are they present? So be present and show that level of care. And the other thing I'd expect of leaders today is to make time. You know, we're all working incredibly long hours. Part of it is that we just don't have the discipline, many organizations or individuals yet, to figure out how to work from home. Like, how do you separate work from home? But put time into intentionally reaching out and connecting with your individual direct reports and their direct reports. I was talking to someone earlier this week who's a fairly senior leader, and she's like, I haven't heard from my chief, like not a word. And what we lose, we've all touched upon this, what we lose in being in the same physical location is the opportunity for that hallway chatter, you know, that quick sidebar or a cup of coffee, or we're filling up our water and you're going to talk for 30 seconds. Now you have to be super intentional, right? If you want to talk to somebody, you better reach out on your instant messaging platform or schedule a meeting or pick up the phone or text. Like, you have to be intentional about connecting with people. So lead with intention. Make sure your people are aware, they're informed, and they know that you exist and that you actually have a point of view and that you're thinking thoughtfully about what situations may come forth in the future.
Really, all excellent advice. And as one of the people that these three lead, I will say that this leadership team is great about transparency, and we all really appreciate it. And even though it might not always be great news, at least it's news that we're aware of. And so nobody likes surprises. I mean, leaders always like to say, I never want to be ambushed, neither do employees. So great advice for leadership today.
Thanks, Mary.
So we're coming down to the end, and I want to thank you all so much for sharing your insight and expertise in all of this craziness that's going on, but also thinking about the future, because there will be a future. So I'm just going to invite each of you to share any closing thoughts that you might want to share with the folks who are watching today, like a TV show, but for those who are watching as we wrap our conversation. Jason, I'll throw it to you first.
Yep, thanks, Mary. So a couple quick closing thoughts is, despite what you see on TV, nobody knows exactly when everything is going to get back to normal, but be rest assured that we will get back to some semblance of normal, right? So we as a country, we as a planet will get through this. It's just a matter of time and some of those good scientists finding a cure for that COVID.
Thanks, Jason. Kimberly?
Thanks, Mary, and thanks for everybody watching too. I appreciate it. So for me, it's really about just stay positive and hug your kids if you have them, hug your dogs if you have them, hug your furry animals, your furry kids, and just enjoy the downtime. For those that travel a lot, enjoy the downtime and keep on moving forward. As Jason said, we will get through this as a company. We're going to get through this as a country, and as a whole world, we'll get through this. And I'm here if you all need to talk.
Kimberly. Mark?
Yeah, and I'll agree with that. We are here. We do have office hours. Like, reach out. You can see all of our calendars. We'd love to hear from you and schedule time to talk about, frankly, anything, personal or professional. And I'll just end with something that is near to my heart, which is pick somebody to help. It might be that elderly neighbor that needs help with groceries once a week. It might be mowing that person's lawn. It might be anything you can do. It might be a colleague that was recently displaced that you can reach out to. It might be a friend or a coworker. Just raise your hand and let people know that you are out there, that you're willing to help in any way possible, and you're a sympathetic ear. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we've always tried to do. And I want to encourage anyone and everyone that listens to this to just start with one person. You don't have to boil the ocean. You don't have to support everybody, but if you can just pick one person to assist and start there and get that person to assist another person, that's how we're going to support one another and get through this intact. But like Kimberly said and Jason said, we're so appreciative of your time and really look forward to our next conversation as well.
Thanks, Mark. So thanks again to all three of you for putting yourselves out there. First try on our panel discussion, and warts and all, but I really appreciate it. For those of you who are watching, we hope that this has been beneficial to you as you navigate this present and you're planning for the future. We'll be doing additional videos with this type of approach, and we'll be posting them on our website and our Twitter feed, which is @VoiceOfHR. So, and also, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Like Mark said, we all have office hours, but you can find us online. Stalk us. We love that. And we want to be there to help you through this. So thank you all and have a great day.